to join us. We want to welcome the two of the principals from Claymont City Schools here in Yorksville, Ohio. And they are going to be sharing with us today some of the strategies that they have employed to help to recover calamity days. So they're using Zoom and some of the things that they liked about the last 2 years, and they've moved forward and they're growing forward with strategies and practices that are allowing them to kind of recoup some of those calamity days. And the reason I invited them, Shay and I have been incredibly close friends since we were 15. And so I knew what they were doing. I knew how they were doing it. I still am closely involved with a lot of the students at Claymont. And to me, it just was everything that we can be doing and the good that we did learn out of the last 2 years of the pandemic to help our students and our families and our school districts maintain academic learning, even when we do have calamity days. So with that, I want to go ahead and welcome everyone. If you're not aware of who I am, I'm Michelle Carlisle. I'm here at the East Central Ohio Educational Service Center. And this is one of the sessions that we've kind of put out there as part of our Remote EdX instructional technology coaching grant, and we're happy to have everyone today. I am going to quickly turn my slide in case you didn't get the chat. If you scan that QR code and you do want a certificate of attendance afterwards, I will run that as soon as we're done today and get you guys a certificate of a contact hour. And Shawna is just joining. I just admitted her. And with that, I wasn't sure. Kelsey, are you starting today or is Shay starting today?
Oh, Shay can start.
All right.
Oh, I would pass it to you.
I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to let Shay take over. One of the first things I thought we might talk about or try to hit on was both you and Shay, both you and Kelsey and your teams, your building did use Zoom and other classroom strategies to help overcome and reduce your calamity days. And I just hope you're able to share with us how you roll that out, what that looked like for your buildings, and if you're able to tell us just some of the initiative, the district planning that went into this plan. And if that doesn't work for you, you can go off script.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm excited to be here with you today talking about some of the things that we've been doing here at Claymont Primary School. I'm the principal here. It's my first year here in Claymont. Previously, I had worked in Belair Local and Conotton Valley Union Local, and before that at the East Central Ohio Educational Service Center, and before that at New Philly City Schools. So it's been nice to be able to pull some of those experiences together and try to implement it here at the primary building, and work with the staff here and work through some of the things that we've all experienced over the past couple of years with the pandemic. The one thing that I found that was the most impactful was we've all learned how to start using technology to instruct. And we wanted to tweak that and make it better. But coming up with a solid plan at the beginning of the school year was really one of the things that set us in the right direction, I think. So in August, we didn't know what was going to happen. We didn't know if the pandemic was going to hit again. We didn't know if we would be closing down at any point in time. We did know that in our contract, snow day 6 became a remote learning day. So we knew that most likely we are going to be encountering this at some point in time in the school year. So in August, when we had our opening day meetings, I started talking right away about what our remote learning schedule was going to look like. And we started planning from that day. So let's get the kids here because, I'm in a preschool through first grade building. Let's figure out, let the kids come in, let's get acclimated a little bit. But by the end of September, beginning of October, I wanted their remote learning plans. So they had to give me their plan of their day for what their day would look like in a remote learning situation. And so we practiced with Zoom, and I had the staff practice and make sure that they could get in their Zoom accounts. We were looking at Google Classroom. That was something that we've got implemented across the board. So last year there was kind of a mix of Dojo and Google Classroom, and this year the district decided that we're all Google Classroom. So using Dojo as like a communication or possibly a like behavioral type things with the points, but our content centers in Google Classroom. So as a district, we made those decisions. Everybody's Zooming, everybody's got Google Classroom up and running. And what do we need to do to make sure that kids know how to get into those two platforms? So that was something that we set up right away. Now, we were lucky in the fall, we didn't have to close down due to COVID, but we knew that Snow Day 3 and Snow Day 4 came. And so when Snow Day 5 came, we knew that we needed to reevaluate the plans that we had made in September, because everybody had grown even from that point in time. What does it look like for special ed? What does it look like for title and support services? What does it look like for our specials classes, art, music, gym? Those teachers are all teaching and supporting kids as well throughout the school day, and we did not want to not include them in our instructional plan. So that took some trial and error also, because at first we were thinking, okay, when are you we're asking each teacher, when are you teaching your whole group reading? Okay, so when will small group reading happen for this particular class? And then we kind of worked through that and we decided, no, all first grade is teaching reading at this time in the day. All first grade is teaching math at this time of the day. And so we had these set Zoom links for live instruction at certain points in the day. And then following that, the title teachers and the resource room teachers scheduled their small group instruction around those whole group times. And that really was a great aha for us that made scheduling and planning nice and easy and smooth. And it was nice for parents as well. So they knew that all kids had reading their live instructional Zoom lesson at 10 and at 1. And then everything else was scheduled around that time. So that was one of the best, I guess, things that we worked through schedule wise to help manage that. And our attendance was remarkably high. Some small group sessions weren't as high as what we would like. And there were a couple of times where we didn't have any attendance in some of those small group, but we had over half, mostly 3/4 participation in our live sessions and our small group sessions. So I was really excited about our attendance, and I hopped into every Zoom session that I could, so I could at least hear every teacher teaching. And I loved hearing, okay, yesterday we did this, or last week, so now we're going to, and they didn't stop learning. It was a continuum of learning from what we had done the day before or previous days. And I loved hearing them say the next time or tomorrow we will, whether that be Zoom or whether that be face-to-face. We're really breaking that barrier of how we can instruct and teach. And I was just super proud of our teachers for being able to literally easily flip back and forth between the modes of instruction.
So and we had previously done a podcast on this topic. I guess I did not mention that before. And it really was, in light of everything that we learned, the things that didn't work as well and things that do work well, transitioning to this model with these practices and procedures in place really seemed to set the positive framework to allow the district not to have to really focus on what does it look like when we have to go beyond our calendar? What is it going to look like to get everything accomplished? And so I was excited by that. And that's one of the reasons I wanted that to be able to be shared. I don't know who else has tried this since we've come back to in-person learning. So I really appreciate that. Kelsey, are you ready to tell us how you approach this in your building. Kelsey also is in her first year in this role.
Yes, I am. So I'm the assistant principal at Claymont, but I'm in a unique position because I was a teacher in this building last year. So I went through the last 2 years of remote instruction, and I can sort of see that from both sides. And I knew the frustrations of the teachers at the high school, because I was frustrated last year that the teachers were working very, very hard to plan good lessons, and to do all, making videos and doing all this stuff. I mean, I was a biology teacher. I was doing labs and videotaping myself so the kids could see me. And then very few kids came because it wasn't a requirement that we had last year. So I knew going into this year in this role that was something that was important to me, that we needed to make the kids accountable. And it's particularly because part of my job is attendance and truancy for these high school kids. So I needed to be able to say, this counts. Like, the teachers are working really hard. You need to be there. And that was something that was really important to myself and the principal, Ms. Khan, because we wanted it to matter. We didn't want these days to just be lost, and that, the teachers are putting in all this effort. We wanted to make sure that the kids were there too. So, I think that was one of the things. And like Shay said, at the beginning of the year, as a district in, our administrative meetings, we decided that we knew at day 6 this was going to happen. So around day 3 or 4 of us being off, we started telling the teachers at the high school, at the high school, we don't have the scheduling issues that Shay does at the primary, because, we're on period. So we knew that wasn't going to be, it's different for us, but we wanted the teachers, we said, this is what's going to happen. These are the expectations. And we suggested, and I think a lot of them did, practice with Zoom in the classroom. This, join right now and make sure you can get in, make sure you know where stuff's at, they walk the kids through that. And really, I think the teachers did a fabulous job of front loading the kids with information on how to join and what to do. And this is where you're going to find everything. And I think that was really a big part of why we were successful. The intervention specialists were expected to join the classes that they were into, and they joined those Zoom sessions and helped, and they did some small groups. They, you can pull those kids out and do different rooms. So the intervention specialists were there providing what they needed. I don't think Shay mentioned this, as a district, we ended up in another reason why I think we were so successful is because we did a 2-hour delay schedule for these days as well. And that was huge. I think that was a huge thing, especially for high school kids, asking them to get up on a day they don't have to and be in class at 7:40. That's hard. So we started at 9:40, and we had the 2-hour delay schedule out everywhere. We told them, we made sure it was on the website and they knew where to find it. And that was about perfect. The classes then were about a half an hour, and teachers had 10 or 15 minutes of their instruction. And, the teachers stayed in the classroom that whole time. Some of the kids jumped off because then they're independent and they can do it. If it's a math lesson, a lot of them might feel comfortable to keep on without the teacher, but they could jump back on if they needed to. But some of the kids stayed and the whole time, but the teachers were available that whole half an hour for the kids to jump back on if they needed. And we had really positive feedback from the teachers, but they can tell you but that's sort of the background of where we came from. But we stressed to the kids about the truancy. A lot of these kids, they're missing at the high school. We've had problems with that the last couple of years. So that was something we really stressed with them too. So I don't know if there's any of the other teachers from my building that want to say something about it, but go ahead. Add on to what I said.
I'll say something. I agree with everything Kelsey said, and to second what Shay said, I think that continuity between what's happening in the classroom the day before needs to continue when we jump into that remote learning. And in my classroom, I maintain a virtual classroom, which I project on my board each day. My students have their Chromebooks open to the virtual classroom. So, on that remote day, they just pulled up their virtual classroom, clicked on the link to the Zoom session, and there we are with the same thing they're used to seeing all day long. The second thing I do agree, and I both agree that 2-hour delay schedule is very helpful in getting our teenagers on board for first period. I pretty much had 100% attendance first period for those days that we were out and all the way through. And along with that, I don't know what some of the other teachers do, because we do have some flexibility to decide, but I do not have my students keep their cameras on the entire time. I found during the pandemic that some of our teenagers, they don't want their peers to look at their home life in for to judge them based on their bedroom or how they did or did not do their hair that day or what they're wearing. And I also have them keep their mics off, which I think is kind of consistent with the elementary school as well, because there's a lot of things going on in their environment that the teens would not want their peers to be hearing. So I just have them pop in. They just have to give me a quick wave. I know they're on because in the lessons they need to type responses to me through chat, or they have the opportunity to turn on their microphone if they want. So I try to keep them engaged in that way. Also maybe through things like a Kahoot game where they're having to be on there and interact with each other and with me, rather than see them the entire time or interact in ways that doesn't expose their home environment to peers and to us.
I'll jump in here
Yep.
next. I'm Amy Rossi, English teacher, 9th grade primarily. And I agree with Heather. I didn't mandate that that I see them, just besides a little hand. I said, just give me a hand. And some stayed on, and some did get off, just like you said, Kelsey, because, we have our lesson structured. So it would be about 10 or 15 minutes discussing the lesson. And then sometimes the day too, the next day then was just a continuation. What I found worked so great was GoGuardian. And so once I spoke with them, asked for any questions, then I put them all on GoGuardian. And then I chat with them through GoGuardian. And I see what they're working on. I see exactly who needed help, who needed extra assistance. Then I would chat in. You can also call them. And so that they knew that, I'm checking their papers. And so it was a little bit shocking for them, I think, the first time, but it just worked out. It worked out so well for me. So I didn't have many kids. There were a couple, but what I found was it was the same one. So if I had a couple kids all day long, which I think is really great, they didn't show for all 3 days. And when I talked to them later, what they said was it was a computer issue at their home, which could be, or live out. But I couldn't believe it. In fact, I emailed Kelsey and said, Kelsey, I do not believe this. It was at the end of the first day. I said, I might have had one absence that day, much less than I have on a regular day. I just was in shock. But that's what I do with it. And GoGuardian, again, is my friend, and I love it.
You say GoGuardian, and my first thought is, it's just a step above Securely. All it does is just make us the ESC have more tech tickets. And even because I'm out of the classroom now, I didn't even think about GoGuardian supplying another mode of communication, because its primary role for most of our districts is making sure we control what they're doing on their Chromebooks. So that's just a little big aha for me.
I used it in a positive way for a change.
Absolutely. But I mean, it's absolutely true. I'm going to walk down the hall as soon as we're done, because I just don't think about using it that way. So
I think, Michelle, one of the things that, as Kelsey was talking and the high school teachers are talking too, because we're at both ends, right? Like, I'm at the primary and the littlest Mustangs, and they're at the high school with the biggest Mustangs. But what we're sharing is our expectation is this: we're having school. You need to be here at school, and we're teaching authentically at school, whether we're face to face or virtual. How we do it can be so different. Mm-hmm. So we were allowed to have the flexibility to run our school day in accordance to what works for us, for 3, 4, 5, 6-year-olds, or for 15, 16, 17, 18-year-olds. And I think that that's also something really important for districts as they're implementing from pre-K to grade 12 is what is going to work. We had to work through some of that attendance stuff. We had admin meetings about what does attendance look like. I mean, we're still required to teach these kids. They're still required to show up. I don't want to do an attendance plan because they didn't show up on remote learning. So what are we going to do about this? So, I mean, I can't say enough about the amount of students who were present during this time. And I think that most of us were again, flexible with, if your internet is not working. We still have kids who don't get internet or had sketchy internet. I had some teachers who were trying to Zoom and their internet wasn't very stable. So sometimes, you know, they would freeze, or sometimes you just want to connect. And then, but we had our content platform in place through Google Classroom. So there was a communication of like, my Zoom is not working right now, or the parents would be able to communicate. We're not able to log on, but we're following along in Google Classroom. So we had that in place along with Zoom to support education.
Yep. Those are great. And the takeaways are what I've been so fascinated by. And I do want to, Shawna is still on, and I believe Ashley is the fourth teacher. So Shawna, would you like to go next?
Sure, sure. I do want to reiterate just how important I felt like the 2 hour delay schedule was. Even for me, I mean, I'm a planner, and so when we get those snow days that you didn't expect, you know, having the 2 hours in the morning to even prepare something and make sure you have everything laid out, you know, if you're teaching 3 or 4 subjects a day, that was really, really important just for me, just to feel like, okay, I'm prepared. So I'm not sitting down at the computer in panic. Oh my gosh, what's next? Because once that day starts and you're teaching 4 periods in a row, you don't have time to stop and breathe and rest. And I will also say, you know, whenever you are planning for that kind of remote day, it's shocking how fast the time goes. So I might have, you know, 2, 3 activities planned and get through 1 or 2. So I really had to learn to adjust my expectations for just how much we could do in that time. You know, by the time you log on and greet everyone and take attendance and deal with any connection issues, you know, we're 5 minutes into your 30-minute period, and now it's time to get up with, you know, a quick introduction and here's what we're doing and get them into the activity, and you know, that time is gone. So, you know, I had to learn to really temper my expectations of what I could accomplish in that time. But like the other teachers said, I was just shocked by the attendance. I think that, you know, it helped the kids to know that they were going to have a teacher there to guide them. You know, it was novel for them. And I really liked, you know, what Mrs. Dot said about, you know, engaging the students throughout the lesson, letting them utilize the chat box. You know, they enjoyed that part of it, and being able to see what each other you know, what they had to say, and that they all had a voice. You know, that was nice for them, honestly. I think it was nice for them, you know, in class sometimes, you know, not everybody gets called on, but in a chat box, they all get to answer. And so they enjoyed different aspects of that as out of the ordinary.
And Ashley, is there anything else that you would like to add?
Sure. My name is Ashley Bendel, and I teach biology. And I could relate so well to what Kelsey was saying, because her and I actually team taught and co-taught last year together. We were the 2 biology teachers, and we were spending, like she said, so much time like filming these labs and making the activities and changing all of our worksheets into a digital format. And it was just so hard to deal with, you know, 2 kids turning them in a class period. And what Shay said, I can piggyback off of that. You know, our students didn't stop learning. I can think back to these lessons that I did, and I was at DNA at the time, and I was, you know, yesterday in class we did this, and then I was still able to scaffold that material, which was so important. So I didn't really lose my pacing. Maybe here and there, like what Shawna said, because I teach double periods some periods, so I maybe have 5 or 6 things planned where I could maybe get through 1 or 2 things in a Zoom call. One thing I did find to be very helpful, I don't know about you guys, but I hate grading online assignments. And so the first day I had this great mutations activity, you know, for my morning classes. And after I got 40 kids to submit it, I'm thinking like, oh my gosh, this is going to be very painful to grade. And I wanted to have it graded, you know, so I could see if we could go over it again the next day or whatever. So I actually made a Google form, and I made the answers into multiple choice. twice. And so the next day, as like the entrance ticket, while we were waiting for kids to add, come into class, I had them put their answers on the Google form from the activity before. So then I could quickly say, okay, this mutation we're struggling with. So then that took a lot of time. So it was something that probably would have taken me 2 hours to grade, ended up taking me 5 minutes to do. So that was something, I wish I would have thought of that a lot sooner, but that was something I found to be very beneficial.
And that perfectly leads into what I wanted to try to highlight with all of you next was, of course, 75% of my day is in virtual learning way before the pandemic. This is where my wheelhouse is. This is how I communicate. This is how I educate. This is where I work. But it isn't where everybody else lives. But my hope is we've realized that education can continue and can look differently without being interrupted when we put some planning into it. And I think that, for me, from someone sitting on the outside, has been so impressive this year, that you came out of all of the pressure and the emergent reaction and everything we did to get through the last 2 years. But now you all as a team and as a district have been able to kind of take that and make this work well for, like Shay has said, and you both all reiterated, is each of your buildings and learning spaces. But as you think about the future and what it might look like for your classroom next year, or weather-related days or different schedules, what are some takeaways that you all, and some of you already hit on some of those, but what are some of those takeaways that that you're going to continue to utilize, whether you are in your brick and mortar or you're in a remote day? And I'll start. I'll let whoever start, and we can start with Heather again since she started first last time.
I just think that consistency is the key. Continuing what we are doing the previous day in person, and then taking that, whether we're in person or remote, the next day. We just have that consistent routine built into our daily schedule, and very little changes then when we're on that remote platform.
What about you, Amy?
I agree. When you were saying about the Google Classroom, Shay was saying the Google Classroom, that has proven to be, I think since it's K through 12 now, we're all doing it. That has helped the transition, because before, when we first went remote, some of the teachers, some of us used it, and not everyone did. So the kids were trying to go to all kinds of different platforms, and to us it doesn't seem like a big deal because we're individually just dealing with one, but those kids may have 5 different places to go in a day, and that was just, we found, very confusing. So when we all just, everybody posts daily on it. And it also just helps in the regular, there it is in the regular classroom when I'm there, because the kids that are absent now can access all that material. If I want to throw a video on, I can do that. And that way, if they're sick or, they're hurt or something's wrong, they can do it easily, actually. And I just think what Heather is saying with the consistency, that's key. And now they all know where to go. And it's kind of nice because a brother or sister might be online at a Google Classroom. I have a 9th grader, there might be a 6th grader on, in their school. So we're all doing the same thing, and I just think that's what really is.
And for our older students, even, there's some days where they come to class where they're distracted, something maybe happening at home, they can't quite focus on the lesson, maybe they're not feeling well, but they know that they can always go back and get that in the classroom. I mean, they're not catching everything, but they're catching the big ideas so they can keep moving forward rather than keep following behind.
Love that. Shawna.
I think too,
Oh, go ahead, Shay.
another takeaway- I'm sorry.
No, go ahead,
Another
Shay. It's
takeaway,
okay.
Was understanding that classroom management still needs to happen inside Zoom. And that was something that I think also the teachers work through, especially with little ones who are so excited to see each other at first when they get on. Unlike some teens, 5-year-olds want to see their friends and say hi, and so that's super exciting for them. Knowing mute everybody coming into the classroom, right? Like otherwise we've got holy cow loudness everywhere. So that's a simple little management lesson that we work through. But also knowing how to raise hands. We even had kids asking to go to the bathroom, like asking for bathroom passes, or one little guy, the snow and ice was coming down and he was so excited he ran away, and the teacher's like, this is just like in the classroom, you don't get to leave, like we're having class right now, you don't get to go look at the window right now. So it's things like that you don't think about, but the teachers and the students both learn that there's some management. Like I'm the teacher, I'm teaching you something, and it's your job to learn, and we need to talk and ask questions and get permissions. And so some of that was also fun to see, that evolution from the first Zoom session to however many we did. But I liked watching that too. And like I said, I hopped into every class at some point in time, multiple classes. So every day I'm hopping into Zooms too. I want to see the kids. I want to stay connected. I want to make sure that, I'm seeing the learning and the standards, and I wanted to know and be completely involved with what was happening too, so that I could go back and talk to the teachers about how is it working? What do you think? What do we need to do? And I think that that's another huge component of a successful remote learning platform, is that we're constantly conversing and brainstorming and tweaking and trying things and just talking about tips that work or don't work. And I think that there's such a huge opportunity for forward growth as we just keep thinking outside the box of how we could use this.
I agree. I completely agree. Shawna, did you have takeaways? I mean, you mentioned a couple. You said planner, and that's probably the characteristic I first think about you when I think of Shawna Hupp. Quiet, steady planner.
For me, I just, as a high school math teacher, I just have to realize that, for me, the teaching online or teaching remotely, I have learned, I am not going to accomplish everything in a 30-minute remote lesson that I will in the classroom. So I have learned to treat these days, I'm going to move forward, I'm going to make progress, and the kids are going to learn and deepen their understanding. And I have to accept that and know that, it is better than if we were home on a snow day and nothing was happening. So I kind of, it's a state of mind. I want to think of those days more as bonus days. This is bonus learning that we're getting, and it is improving their skills. And I may not be able to teach a brand new Algebra 2 skill perfectly over Zoom, but I can certainly improve upon what we've been doing and deepen that. So that was a big takeaway for me. And once I gave myself permission to do that, then I think that was a big step for me. And the other takeaway for me, again, being like you referenced, the planning. I had a little bit of a panic, knowing we could have a snow day anytime. I need to be prepared with all this stuff. Once we kind of hit day 4, 5 snow days, and I knew that this was going to happen, I actually kind of sat down for each of the classes that I teach and planned out 4 or 5 things that could be options for days like this. And we did do so many remote lessons, and I had all these wonderful materials prepared from last year, Nearpods and Kahoots and all these interactive things. It turns out I have a wealth of resources already created that turned out to be perfect for these remote days. So I just kind of went through my stuff, and I made myself a physical list. So when we found out, okay, this is a remote snow day, I could pull out the list and say, okay, what is going to fit the best today? Sometimes it was the next thing that I was going to work on, and sometimes it was a little bit more of a review of the current skills that we had. So those were key things for me to make this successful in the classroom.
Ashley, did you have additional takeaways?
Well, I agree with everything that Heather, Amy, and Shawna said, and also just, kind of going back to what Amy said, the importance of just that Google Classroom. And even I catch myself all the time, even in class, like referring back to, Google Classroom and pulling it up on my board and saying, okay. And even so, like, I have high school kids who struggle to take notes, and maybe they don't have to have a copy of notes, but like, it's nice. They have very poor note-taking skills, and it's nice that I'm posting all of those materials online, and they know that they're there, and I put them all under the classwork tab, and it's organized by week. I think that's another big thing, is having that classroom organization. It's not always user-friendly to us and the students if everything's posted in the stream. So Kelsey and I kind of came down last year. We kind of said, okay, we're going to post everything under classwork by weeks, and that's our topic, and then Monday and the date, and then we put the information there that they need. And I think a lot of the teachers here kind of transitioned to that. I think in the beginning we were like March 2020, we were just adding it all to the stream, and it was very overwhelming for us and the students. So that's definitely something that I've continued to implement in my classroom, and just constantly referring back. Maybe I post quizzes for practice, vocabulary practice, and the kids have to get it done. Maybe we don't play it in class, but it's, hey, if you want to use this to study for your test on Friday, it's here on the classwork tab, or, any type of resource, really. I have found that to be really helpful in my teaching and in my classroom, and I think the kids enjoy it too. So that's probably my one other thing.
We were talking as a team Tuesday. We're working on some artificial intelligence work, and Erin Warren, who's on the call, actually said, remember when we had homework hotline and you could dial up the homework hotline to figure out what you had to do after school? And when we look at the tools that are available now, just like you guys have pointed out, Google Classroom shouldn't be only if we're not in school, but instead it can easily become, this is, instead of my homework basket at the front of the classroom, here's your information. And I guess even before I transitioned to the ESC, one of the things I really started to percolate, I guess, is, am I grading the skill of taking notes, or am I making sure the students have the information? And if I'm trying to make sure the information is there for them to review, why do I care what the notes look like or how they got them? Now, that's not always the right answer, but for the most part, if the answer to the question is, do the students have everything they need to be able to do what I need them to do, then let's streamline it. And then we can say unilaterally, it's in the Google Classroom, whether or not we're going to be in person tomorrow or whether or not we're taking a remote day. And Erin had, she popped back on, but she had mentioned that homework hotline, called the number, and it just brought back all of the ways we've been able to update things over the years. Well, I don't want to take up all of the time, but I did want, if you have it, if any of you have received community engagement feedback, parent feedback, student feedback, separate from the last 2 years, but this, what's working now, how you've moved forward to stay consistent, continue to teach, reclaim those calamity days. What kind of feedback are you hearing? And I do want to preface, for those not in the area, Claymont is still a school district at this point. In 2022, I might highlight, that has roughly a 20% district rate of lack of internet access. And it's not affordability, it isn't available. And I know this because my best friend and our church are both in an area of the school district that cannot get internet. You can't buy it. So, all of this has been accomplished in a district with student, staff, and support workers. Literally, internet is still something that is not even just a luxury, it's just not available. So what takeaways, if any, have you guys gleaned from all of this, from your stakeholders? Hey, Beth, I just asked them to...
Don't ask me a question right away.
I am not asking you a question right away. I'm just going to say hey and let them answer.
Thank you.
Kelsey, do you have takeaways that were shared with you?
Right, there we go. I think we had really positive feedback from the kids. I mean, I think the kids appreciated the fact that we were continuing the education. And I think the parents were grateful too that they could say, you have to be on there. There was an expectation. So I think that the parents and the kids were both happy that, that continued to happen. Speaking of the internet though, I mean, I think we had to make some adjustments for some of those kids because we knew that. We tried to reach out to the parents ahead of time and said, if you know that this is an issue for your child, please let us know. And we made accommodations for those kids because you have to. I mean, like Michelle said, I mean, I live in an area that I don't have good internet. My own high schooler was not able to Zoom. So he stayed in town some days with friends so that he could do those things, and I think the big thing is a lot of people have made adjustments to what they've had to do in their life that's different. I go about 3 miles out the road and sit in my car sometimes when I have to do things because I do not have internet at home. So, I think a lot of people have decided this is what we got to do, and I think families have adjusted the way they needed to. Like I said, my son stayed 3 nights in town at a friend's house because he was able to be in class then. So I think people have appreciated that and have adjusted to it. I think. So.
We only had a handful of little ones, and again, at our level, we're relying on adults to help get them logged in, especially at the beginning of the year. The kids just don't have the skills built up yet to know how to maneuver, log in, use their username and password, find Google Classroom, get the links, all of that stuff. So we do rely on adults at first. The kids, of course, are getting, more like proficient in all of the skills because the teachers are practicing more and more with them throughout the school day. But we only had a handful of parents who asked for some paper pencil, and we had to accommodate because, again, there's nothing else that we could do, and I want that attendance. So we were providing some paper and pencil. Again, literally a handful or less of students. We did not have very many that did not participate. So, and then I guess some of the things that we did to accommodate for that was if we sent paper pencil and they did not do that, they couldn't get online, we tried to figure out what we could do here at school. And there's a balance between, are we, should they be marked absent? Should they not be marked absent? But we were trying to figure out, my big thing was, I want them learning. So if it takes us time to have one of our aides or title teacher work with the child and show them how to get on here and do the learning, then we're going to take the time and do the learning more than the parent accountability component right now. I know that might sound a little bit, there's lots of discussions about that, like who's responsible. I know, but they're 5, so I want them learning.
Right. Well, and teachers, what takeaways, if any, were shared with you? What, families, students, one of you, one of you really brought something out that I feel is an important takeaway. It was Amy. You had a better attendance rate when they were at home in their own space than when they were reporting to school during their traditional school day. For me, that's a why. That's a what's next. Now, I'm not in your district. I don't get to ask those questions in an administrative capacity, but as a learner, what's the why? And how can we help that?
Yeah, I really, they liked it. I don't know, and I know all the teachers, principals, we're all invested, and we know to really make sure that it's engaging, I guess. That they like the lesson. That's really important on a remote day when I can't come around. I can't use proximity. You don't have a lot of things that you normally do in the classroom. So I think I heard feedback from parents that just their kids were enjoying what they were doing. And some of them, just said it was funny. They felt like they were getting lessons again. They said, I felt like I was learning school. I was just in the kitchen and they're in the living room. So I was learning all these new things again.
Yep.
So.
Heather, did you have additional takeaways?
I'm just going to piggyback off of what Amy said. I did hear from parents students too. I think that gave them a nice window into what is happening in the classroom each day. So rather than, having the teens go home, so what you do? Nothing. They could see
Yeah.
what we're doing and feedback back and forth with their students. So that's nice.
Shawna?
Well, I mean, I think the kids were comfortable in their own environment. They talked about getting to sleep in. They got to run out to the kitchen and grab a snack in between classes. I mean, they looked forward to those days. They didn't dread them. I wasn't sure how they would take them, but they, whenever there was a possibility of one coming up, they were excited about it. Get to sleep in a little bit, have class in your PJs if you want to. I mean, what's not to be excited about? They said it was novel and engaging, and that really was key. They said making sure that they felt like it was very fun and interactive for them.
Ashley, do you have anything to add?
Not really. It's just other than, at the high school level, I think a lot of our students kind of think that we like melt into our chair at the end of the day and we have like no life outside of here. And my kids were like absolutely hilarious. They're like, oh, Miss Wendell, like I love that piece of decor in your house. Or like it just gave a different aspect of our relationship. And they got to see a different side of me. And because I feel like they see me in the same environment every day. And that, that was fun. That was fun.
Well, during the call, Beth Lynch, the technology director at Claymont, joined us. And Beth, we talked about the strategies they put in place to make this work ahead of time. We talked about some of the takeaways. But Beth, as a tech director, do you have anything that you want to share with those on the call? How did this look like for you moving forward this year?
Well, I just think that we just were really, some teachers aren't really good at checking their email on a regular basis. And so, I mean, I think it just in preparation, because we knew we were going to be doing this, just making sure, does everybody have their Zoom license? I mean, we kind of are, they probably feel like we're pests sometimes, but we were just like, kind of just doing those double checks because we just wanted this to be successful. So there was a lot of that kind of stuff going behind the scenes and making sure everybody had the things, and then there's always stuff that comes up at the last minute. So, but at least then that's manageable, and it's not just like, oh my gosh. And then I think, the only thing of what I think is different about this year versus in the past is when you, especially at the high school level, when you knew when we were on remote because of COVID and it was long term, then it's the same old, and it's a grind, where like just doing it for remote learning days, it's like, it's different and it's something special. And I think it's just a really effective model to use going forward with those days, just because, like I said, they see different sides. It's something they look forward to versus, okay, I'm going to add to the end of my school year. I mean, the choice between that for kids, I think, is pretty easy. They would want to, get their days in, and then I think it's a good, they're running something. So I don't know. I mean, truthfully, it was a huge hurdle at the very beginning of COVID, but I think we have teachers old and young have learned a lot, and they continue to use that. And I think that was one of the other things that Shay and I talked about a good bit prior to doing this, was we have to just keep people doing this so they don't get rusty and forget. And then, like all of us, like, oh, how do I do that? But if it just becomes second nature in how you design your lessons, or, using video and doing different things, then it just goes a lot smoother. So that would be my take on it.
That's good. Well, I really appreciate everyone's time. I want to quickly open it up and make sure there aren't questions that anyone would like to ask quickly, and then we will wrap for the day. But before we leave, if there's anyone in attendance that has a question they'd like to ask.
I don't have a question, excuse me, but I want to thank you guys. I took 3 pages of notes, so I appreciate you sharing your tips and tricks and all. So thank you.
Thanks. Beth, do you want to tell them where you're from?
I retired from SeaTac in Licking County, and now I do school improvement work. So Michelle and I knew each other when I was doing the career fairs for 9th graders and 11th graders. But now I do school improvement with Barnesville, Shenandoah, Buckeye Trail, so some of the districts that are around you guys.
Thanks, Beth. Are there any other questions? All right. Well, I put the attendance link in the chat one more time. If you want a certificate, I will generate that as soon as we get off of here. We will post the recording in our YouTube channel for later use. I really do appreciate you joining us today, and I hope each of you understand, and you can go back to your colleagues as I watch this. I mean, those, you all know me, and you know I know your students, some of them, but as I watched you roll this out those first snow days, it was just exciting, and it was a bit rewarding to see it working well and to see these pieces of the puzzle stay in place and be successful and capture what was great about what we learned and keep that learning. And I know Shay said, we just had school. And they said, but you used the tools that so many people just wanted to put back away when we were done with the pandemic and we were done with this. But there's so much more we could potentially do in the future using what worked best for us as we went through virtual learning. And it's exciting. It's been very exciting for me to watch. I was able to look at some of that login data historically. I'm like, wow, they have really great attendance. And I talked to Beth and I talked to Shay, and I'm like, you guys had really great attendance. And so it is what you have done, what you've been able to take and are replicating well for your students within your staff really is a good thing. And it really is the opportunity to grow and continue to learn and adapt and look forward through education. And I appreciate it. And I appreciate your hour tonight. And I hope those of you that are involved with the Arts Festival have time to recoup and regroup. And I really thank you. I want to thank all of you for joining us today as well. Thanks, everyone.